So you really got to know how to time things. So we were at the ground round. Everybody's eating, you know. Dad's having a couple beers. Mom's having a glass of wine. And so, you know, what do you want for your birthday? You know, everybody's in a good mood or whatnot. I said, oh, you know, this Turbo Duo is coming out. You know, it's you know, it's a great system. Everybody in the neighborhood's got it. You know, this is what I really want for Christmas. So I start telling them about it. The price comes up. I think it was like $300 or whatnot, maybe even more than that at the time. And they're like, $300? You're out of your mind. You're out of your mind. Anyway, the night continues, and we come to an agreement. If you pay half for it, we'll take care of the other half. So I remember next day, I'm pulling the lawnmower out of the shed. Me and Phil are mowing lawns. I remember Phil had this broken down Snapper lawnmower that would break down. He'd get halfway through the lawn and it would break down. We'd have to go fix it. And I had a decent lawnmower at the time. So we kicked ass, scrounged up the money, and I remember I got my Turbo Duo in the mail. I had to order it. I forgot what catalog I had to order it. I had to order it, and when it came, for the first time in my life, when it came to video games, I was cock of the walk. People would come over my house, and when they would come over, I would turn on Gates of Thunder, the introduction to Gates of Thunder, and it was like, whoa! The music was rocking, the graphics were like, whoa! And you know, it had Gates of Thunder, Bonk Revenge on it, and I remember I bought Fighting Street with it, which was like the first Street Fighter. So I mean, I remember at that time my aunt and uncle gave me a color TV that they were getting rid of, so I had a color TV in my room, which everybody else used to have. I used to have to play in my living room with my sister, trying to turn on the cartoons while I was playing the games. So finally I had a TV in my room, and we would play, my buddy Phil would come over, we'd play Exile on that system, we'd play Cosmic Fantasy 2, Bastille, I mean, just endless great games for that system. Kadash, you know, the list goes on and on. By far my favorite gaming system. We play, it came from the desert, which was today, by today's standards was a horrible game. Even back then it was a horrible game, but we had fun with it. Yeah, so TurboGrafx 16. And then from there, which naturally tanked not too long after I got it. But I can remember after the TurboGrafx 16, my buddy Rex again got Super Nintendo. Now, I know I'm skipping Genesis. This is just the way that I was introduced to. I wasn't introduced to Genesis for a while. You know, after a lot of experience with the TurboGrafx and the Super Nintendo, then I got introduced to the Genesis. But I remember my buddy Rex got Super Nintendo, and he got ActRaiser, John Madden Football, and R-Type, and Final Fantasy II with it. And I mean, Super Nintendo was a sight to behold when it came out. I mean, not only did it have knockout graphics that was super clean. I remember ActRaiser. The graphics was super clean and fast moving, and the sound of the Super Nintendo was really very impressive. And Final Fantasy II, role-playing games for me, maybe I was a little dumb, I don't know. I didn't quite understand role-playing games until a little bit later on. And then I really started to get hold and kind of understand them. For me, I was kind of like a graphics guy. I wanted the latest and best graphics games. And I didn't kind of understand that role-playing games, you know, you'd have a little character running around. And I always used to say, this game is kind of graphically challenged. Until I sunk my teeth into a couple of RPGs and got hooked. Then I really started to understand role-playing games. But I was always a graphics guy, you know. Always wanted to see the latest graphics. And I think that's from being a bystander and sitting there and watching friends play and not necessarily playing myself, but but watching. I wanted to see the improvements and the evolution of graphics were really outrageous to me. So then, yeah, Super Nintendo came out, and I remember my friend Georgie across the street got a Super Nintendo, and he got Street Fighter 2 for it. And oh my God, Street Fighter 2, I mean, we would just live over there and play Street Fighter 2 all night long and beat it with every character and battle each other. And I mean, we learned how to play this game up and down. Great, great memories. But yeah, then from Super Nintendo, oh geez, this is tough. I picked up a Sega Genesis, and by that time you could get Sega Genesis games cheaper than normal. And this is how I met my friend VS. VS had a Sega Genesis, and I remember playing. I had gotten Phantasy Star 2 from some kid at school, and I played this game and I absolutely loved it. And I wound up going to karate, and I met this guy VS, and I told him, you got to play this game, you got to play this game. So I let him borrow it. The next thing you know, we started hanging out, and then we would play different Sega Genesis games together. I remember I'm probably not pronouncing this right. Herzog Zwei, whatever. We would play that game over and over and over again. Have so much fun with that game. And yeah, VS would come over and we'd play, you know, Sega Genesis and even the Turbo Duo. That was a fun time. It was a fun time having those three 16-bit systems out. Sega Genesis, Super Nintendo, and TurboGrafx 16. But TurboGrafx 16s didn't have a very long run. I can remember going to Electronics Boutique, and this was the story of my life. I would walk right from the front of the store to the back, because my stuff would be in the back. And I can still remember TurboGrafx games at the back of the store. And there'd be like 10 or 15 of them. And that site is something that a lot of people don't remember. To see actual TurboGrafx games for sale in Electronics Boutique was exciting. I used to run back there and to see what the latest games were out for that. But anyway, from there, from Super Nintendo, let me check the camera again, because I don't want to go past our mark, but I'll mix all these together. Okay, so then the 16-bit age was introduced to the 32-bit stage in gaming, and I remember seeing PlayStation for the first time in Sears, and quite frankly, not being all that impressed. Now you have to remember, when that PlayStation came out, Super Nintendo and Genesis were on fire as far as their advancements in graphics. You know how systems, when they first come out, the graphics are alright, but then they learn how to program for the system. And I remember by the end of Genesis's run, I mean, the games were smoking, man. You had 8 meg, 16 meg games, 32X. I mean, the Genesis was smoking, so graphically the games were very advanced. And I remember seeing the PlayStation display and being like, I guess it's all right. I wasn't too impressed with it, and my 32-bit, my first 32-bit system was the Sega Saturn, and to me, I was a Sega Saturn guy, where there were a lot of PlayStation guys out there. The PlayStation I didn't get into till later on, well, naturally PlayStation has a great library of games, but for me it was the Sega Saturn all the way. I mean, games like Guardian Heroes, and they had a lot of shooters and fighting games and stuff like that. I mean, shooters for me, spaceship shooters are like probably my favorite genre of games now. So you can get games like Thunder Force, the the Darius games. I mean, Sega Saturn, they had a lot of great shooters. Radiant Silvergun. I mean, the list goes on. I don't really want to focus on games right now. I'll focus on games later. I just want to talk about systems here. But yeah, Sega Saturn was where it was at for me, and I wound up picking up a PlayStation a while after Sega Saturn. But then PlayStation had some wild games. The Driver. Driver was such a great game. I think that was the first game I ever picked up from my PlayStation, and a whole slew of role-playing games for it that were amazing and whatnot. Then I can remember 3DO. I remember my buddy picked a 3DO when it came out. I remember seeing it. It was like $700. Like, are you out of your mind? 3DO was. But I mean, for the time, they were pretty incredible graphics and whatnot. My friend picked up one used on the cheap, and we would go over there and play that. Neogeo was busting out at the time. Neogeo, you know, in the arcades was awesome. I mean, but Neogeo was another one that was way out of our league because it was so expensive. I mean, I remember we had a kid at school who basically had everything. And I remember he had a Neogeo, and we're like, you know, this guy might as well have been, you know, the next Messiah. So, yeah, that was the 32-bit age. For me, when I think 32-bit, I think Sega Saturn. That was my system. But and after that, the 64-bit age came out, and the Nintendo 64. I remember playing Mario 64 for the first time and saying to myself, wow, Nintendo did it again. Because this was something nobody's ever seen before. Guys, if you could remember walking into the video game store and seeing Mario 64 for the first time, this was like, you'd have to pick your tongue up off the floor. You couldn't believe what you were seeing. And to play the demo was like... Nintendo's very good at doing that, blowing your mind when they bring out a system, and that's exactly what they did. And as far as 64 gaming is concerned, I bought a Jaguar. We want to talk about bum luck. My 64-bit system was the Jaguar, and I remember buying game after game after game in disbelief, thinking to myself, can you make one good game for this system? It would almost be like a joke. I would buy these games and I'd just be waiting for the one game that was actually playable, that was actually good. I wound up with such a library of Jaguar games just searching for a good one. That was like the most ridiculous thing about the Jaguar. The games were fucking terrible. It was like, this is 64-bit. What's going on here? You know, everybody else is moving along with the Nintendo 64 and whatnot, and I'm like, I'm stuck with my Jaguar, and I'm wondering what did I do wrong in life? Was I Adolf Hitler in a past life? But anyway, yeah. So that's about where I stopped. I never went on to the PlayStation 2. Never owned one. Played it at friends' houses and whatnot, but that's kind of where my gaming career kind of petered off. So from there on, I really don't have that much knowledge. So I'm thinking maybe, you know, we'll review these old school game systems, and I plan to review a lot of games and whatnot. And maybe then we'll just move into the future. And being that I don't know anything about a PlayStation 2 or you know, whatever, Nintendo Wii or these systems I don't really know about. So as we move into those, it'll be interesting, I think, to review those systems with kind of a retro eye and never have played it. It'll be weird because the timeline will be totally out of whack. Anyhow, so that's it. That's a little piece of gaming history, just so you guys know where I'm coming from, and just so I can maybe gain a little credibility with you guys, so you know my point of reference when I review games and where I came from. And I felt that was important. I felt that I have to let you guys know where I've been before I tell you where we're going with the show. So, that's it. That's history, babe. That's one for the history books.